what's Michigan's record going to be this year? They just won the national title. They just ran it off, undefeated, historical season, and then here they are with an over-under win total of 8.5 at FanDuel to start the year. And that's down from 9.5. So we've had a lot of action on the under there so far. So they currently sit with an 8.5 over-under win total. That's fairly heavily juiced to the over, but still it has been bumped down from 9.5. They are fourth best right now in terms of odds to win the Big Ten. They are plus 150 to make the playoff. And they are 126th in returning production. I think that's a stat that's been thrown around about as much as any stat that I've heard, pound for pound, about college football this upcoming year. Their recruiting classes, as we dive into this, one more thing you need to know. Their recruiting classes, they had back-to-back-to-back classes that finished inside the top 15. The last two classes they've had, albeit slightly, have been just outside the top 15. So with a lot of talent leaving, they don't have elite classes to backfill them. They got pretty good classes, and they're great. They've been great at developing. But if we're just assuming all that backfilling happens seamlessly, that's a tall proposition. So here is what I think I know about Michigan. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, that's about as elite a 1-2 combo on the interior of a defensive line as you're going to have in college football. I have very little doubt that they will be as stout as they need to be against the run. That will probably be the strength of this team. But also at tight end, they are very good. Running back, very good. Corner, those three positions, you have an elite player that could challenge for being the top player at their position in the sport. So even with all that departing talent, notice those aren't just defensive players I listed there. Even with that departing talent, Michigan still got some studs on their roster. Don't think that this was just an etch-a-sketch where you wipe the entire slate clean. In some cases, like the coaching staff, that did happen, but that team still got a lot of players here. And another thing I think I know is it's going to be one of the most run-heavy offenses in college football. It kind of was last year. I think it may be even more run-heavy this year, partly by design, but mostly by necessity, than it was last year. So here's what I need to know as a result of that. I need to know, can they throw the ball? I mean, if they need to, can they throw the ball? Well, Josh, it didn't matter last year. Well, it did matter last year. Even with how dominant that ground game and that offensive line was, there was a moment, it came in the Rose Bowl against Alabama, where they needed a drive, and J.J. McCarthy made a few throws, and they end up getting down there, tying the game, eventually winning the game. At the very least, and we'll talk about their schedule in a second, at the very least, they'll have those moments again this year. Again, at the very least. I don't think this team's as good as it was last year. So maybe more so this year. They'll have to be able to throw the ball. But with the ground-centric approach that I expect from them, is this offensive line close to what it was last year? I don't expect them to fall off a cliff, but when you are replacing 199 starts, when 5 of your top 6 are gone, I know that they have players there. I know that. Okay, but this, I'm not saying Michigan fans have a blind assumption. Maybe some of the more, bathed in the Kool-Aid maize and blue Michigan fans have an assumption that, well, it's Michigan, so we'll always be good on the offensive line. Well, you were great on the offensive line last year. Back-to-back Joe Moore awards. Will you be great again? And the reason I ask that's not because you can't win with a pretty good offensive line, but you probably won't impose your will with a pretty good offensive line. So they better be playing at a high level, especially if you're limited in what you can do, doubly especially in the intermediate passing game. If it's just a shot play offense, play action, and then run the ball, you better have the offensive line that is fit to pave the way for that. Thirdly, can they play from behind? Because last year, here's a paper popper of a stat. This right here is a padlock stat. First of the year. 95% of Michigan's snaps last year came with the lead. That's pretty wild. That's hard to do. I don't think that number will replicate itself this year. So if they find themselves in position to have to play from behind, it's a little different game script than hanging out up at Penn State and just running the ball 30 times in a row and yawning as the clock runs out. What about this coaching staff? This coaching staff, ton of transition. Happy for Sharon Moore that he got the job. Obviously, he's totally unproven. Now, you need to understand something. If you're watching this for the first time, when I talk about grading a coaching staff, we've got a model that internally grades every guy that coaches this game. So it's not my opinion I'm throwing at you. We got blind criteria, blind filters on here, and we run everyone through the same one, and we weight it for strength of competition and whatnot. but we're not going to grade a guy who's never done it before. So Sharon Moore just has a data incomplete on him. That's criteria that we've always had. Kirk Campbell, 1 year of experience, offensive coordinator there. Data incomplete on him as well. It could be the best in the game. All that means is we don't have enough of a data set to form a profile on him. This offensive support staff, we do though. And they're outside the top 75 right now. Now it's a young staff, so you could see great strides made over the course of a season in that department. But all I can tell you is what we have in the here and now. Now, it could be that Sharon Moore knows what he has, and this model has no way of knowing that yet because this model sees numbers and Sharon Moore sees living, breathing human beings. But model doesn't run on faith and confidence. Sharon Moore can run his program on that. New DC, Wink Martindale, lifetime in the NFL, no college experience. Could be good, could be bad, don't have a profile on him. So this defensive support staff is the backbone of this staff because they are top 10. So they killed it. Sharon Moore nailed it on that front, but there is a lot of unknown. Shocker, I know, a lot of unknown. I think it would be smart to expect regression and allow yourself to be pleasantly surprised if there's not any drop-off. That's the approach I'm taking with them. This schedule features 3 of the top 5 teams in the college football playoff odds at FanDuel. Simple as that. They got Texas in week 2 at home. They got Oregon November 2nd at home, and they go to Ohio State, of course, to end the year a couple of days after Thanksgiving. There are no really big bye edges that they have. They do, however, play 4 of the bottom 5 teams in the Big Ten. So when you're predicting their schedule, the point is a lot of folks are going to arrive at the same wins, and then you're going to arrive at either losses or question marks. So the best case, as the model sees it for Michigan, is 11-1. Model thinks even best case, there is 1 loss baked in here somewhere. So we're going to go best case for Michigan, 11-1. Worst case, 8-4. Now I'm going to stop for a second. If your worst case, losing what they lost and losing a coaching staff that they lost, is 8-4, I know you don't want to be 8-4. It could be far worse than 8-4, I promise you. So the model seeing no 7-5s or 6-6s out there, it's actually a sign of a really, really rock solid program. So 8-4 worst case, I predict them to go 9-3. I got Michigan at 9-3 this year. JP Poll starts them at number 11 in the country coming into the year. 9-3 in the Big Ten. What's that good enough for? Now keep in mind, Texas plays them in week 2. So there's a world where one of those losses is to Texas and the other 2 losses are in conference, depending on who they are and depending on how good those teams did the rest of the way. Maybe there's a world where Michigan finds their way into the Big Ten title game. Maybe there's a world where Michigan at 9-3 with their only losses coming to playoff teams is in and of itself good enough to make the playoff. 9-3. It's going to be one of those great debates. You know it's coming. I think Michigan's going to be one of the teams right there on the bubble.